The massive screens in the Galactic Council's main chamber flickered with countless battle simulations. The tall, gray-skinned aliens watched in confusion as their most advanced AI systems failed again and again to predict a simple outcome. The subject of their frustration, a small human mining vessel called Star Seeker. "Run it again," ordered High Commander Reed, his large eyes narrowing at the display. The AI complied, processing trillions of calculations per second. Yet somehow, this primitive human ship had done something that should have been impossible according to their predictions. Meanwhile, unaware of the attention they had drawn, Captain Mark Thompson and his crew of 4 continued their routine mining operation in the distant Omega sector. The Star Seeker wasn't much to look at, just an old Class C mining vessel with some custom modifications. Mark had spent 15 years working in deep space, and he liked to think he'd seen everything the universe could throw at him. He was wrong. "Captain, we're picking up some strange readings," called out Bill from his station. The old sensor operator had been with Mark for 10 years, and his voice had that edge that Mark had learned to trust. "What kind of readings?" Mark asked, pushing away from his worn captain's chair. "Never seen anything like it. It's like space itself is bending around us." Before Mark could respond, the ship's emergency lights flashed red. Through the main viewport, reality itself seemed to tear apart as 3 massive black ships emerged from nowhere. Their surfaces absorbed light rather than reflected it, making them look like ship-shaped holes in space. "Those aren't council ships," whispered Anna from the engineering station. "They're not matching any known configurations." Mark's mind raced. They were alone out here, at least 2 weeks from the nearest human outpost. Their ship was built for cracking asteroids, not combat. But something in his gut told him running wasn't an option. "Everyone, battle stations," he ordered calmly. His crew looked at him like he'd lost his mind, but they obeyed. That's why he'd chosen them. They trusted him, even when his decisions seemed crazy. The black ships moved with impossible precision, forming a triangle around the Star Seeker. A voice boomed through their communications system, speaking in perfect but oddly flat English. "Human vessel, you have entered restricted space. Surrender for processing or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Mark smiled. "Bill, remember that trick we used in the asteroid fields of Jupiter?" Bill's eyes widened. "Captain, you can't be serious. That was with rocks, not warships. Principles are the same, aren't they? Anna, how much power can you give the mining lasers? If I reroute everything including life support, maybe 300% for 30 seconds. Do it. Tom, get ready on those maneuvering thrusters. Jack, I need you to time this perfectly with the cargo bay doors." As his crew scrambled to execute his crazy plan, Mark opened a channel to the alien ships. "This is Captain Thompson of the Star Seeker. We're a simple mining vessel that must have strayed off course. We'll be happy to leave your space immediately. Your deception is noted. Prepare for destruction." The black ships began charging their weapons, but Mark had counted on this response. Now, the Star Seeker's cargo bay doors burst open, releasing a cloud of processed ore particles. At the same time, the mining lasers fired at 300% power, not at the ships, but at the cloud of metallic dust. The superheated particles created a brilliant flash, momentarily blinding the alien ship's sensors. Using the confusion, Tom fired the maneuvering thrusters in a pattern that should have torn a ship of their size apart. The Star Seeker spun and rolled between the alien vessels, their automated targeting systems unable to lock onto something moving in such an erratic and illogical pattern. "Mining lasers at maximum," Anna shouted. "Cargo bay doors cycling," Jack confirmed. The Star Seeker continued its wild dance, using its mining lasers to superheat more clouds of ore particles. Each blast created both a visual screen and a debris field that confused the enemy targeting systems. The black ships fired incredibly accurate shots at where the Star Seeker should have been according to their combat algorithms. But Mark wasn't following any known combat algorithm. He was following his gut, making decisions that felt right in the moment, breaking every rule of space combat. His crew, trained to trust his instincts, followed his rapid-fire orders without hesitation. "Their shots are getting closer," Bill warned. "We can't keep this up much longer." Mark noticed something interesting. The alien ships maintained their perfect triangle formation, even while attacking. Their movements were precise, calculated, predictable. "They're running on some kind of unified combat system," he realized. "Tom, plot a collision course with the lid ship." "You want me to what?" "You heard me. Full speed. Anna, give me everything we've got left in those lasers. Bill, calculate the exact point we'll have to pull up to avoid impact. Jack, be ready to dump the rest of our cargo." The Starseeker charged straight at the largest black ship. The alien vessels, apparently unable to compute the possibility that a mining ship would attempt such a suicidal attack, hesitated for a crucial second. At the last possible moment, Tom pulled up hard. The Starseeker's mining lasers fired at full power, creating a blinding flash directly in front of the lid ship. Simultaneously, Jack dumped their entire cargo hold of processed ore. The superheated metal particles scattered across the alien vessel's hull, creating hundreds of tiny impacts. The alien ship's perfect formation finally broke as they tried to avoid both the debris and their own crossfire. In the chaos, the Starseeker slipped between them and jumped to maximum speed, leaving the mysterious attackers behind. Hours later, after they were sure they weren't being followed, Mark finally allowed himself to relax. His ship was damaged, their cargo was gone, and they'd nearly died, but they'd survived an encounter that should have been impossible. "I can't believe that worked," Jack said, shaking his head. "We beat 3 advanced warships with mining equipment and space dust." "We got lucky," Mark replied, but he knew it was more than that. They'd won because they'd done the unexpected, the irrational, the human thing. What they didn't know was that their entire encounter had been watched, recorded, and analyzed by the Galactic Council. In their grand chamber, the alien leaders were still trying to understand what they had witnessed. The combat AI's prediction accuracy dropped to 0.1% during the encounter, one of the analysts reported. It couldn't establish any logical pattern to the human vessel's actions. "According to our combat protocols, what they did should have been impossible." High Commander Reed studied the replay of the battle again. The mining vessel's erratic movements, its seemingly random but ultimately successful tactics, the way it had turned its own cargo into both a weapon and a defense, none of it made sense to their logical minds. And that, he realized, was exactly what made it so effective. "Contact the science division," he ordered. "I want everything we have on human decision-making patterns. We may have just discovered something far more valuable than we imagined." The Council's interest in humanity had been sparked, though Mark and his crew would remain unaware of this fact for quite some time. They had just demonstrated humanity's greatest strength, the ability to be unpredictable, to think outside of logical constraints, to find solutions that no advanced AI could compute. As the Starseeker limped home, none of its crew realized they had just changed humanity's destiny in the galaxy. They were simply happy to be alive, already planning how to explain their missing cargo to the mining company, and looking forward to sharing their incredible story at the next spaceport bar. Commander Jane Wilson stood at the observation deck of Haven Colony, watching the sunset over the agricultural domes. The small human settlement had been her home for the past 5 years, and she'd grown to love its quiet routine. But something felt wrong today. The emergency alerts had been triggering randomly for the past week, and her military training told her this wasn't just equipment failure. "Commander, you need to see this," called Pete, their sensor technician. He had been one of the first colonists here, and his voice carried the kind of urgency she couldn't ignore. The sensor room was filled with holographic displays showing unusual energy readings in the upper atmosphere. "These patterns," Pete explained, pointing at the screens, "they're not natural. Something's up there, trying to hide." Jane nodded. She had already put the colony's small defense force on alert, though she hadn't told the civilian population yet. Haven was supposed to be a peaceful farming colony, but she hadn't spent 15 years in Earth's Space Force to ignore her instincts. "What's our current inventory?" she asked Mary, her second in command. 3 patrol shuttles, 2 construction mechs, and some mining equipment. The pulse rifles from the last supply run, and we've got those automated defense turrets, but they're meant for wildlife, not space combat. Jane smiled. "Then we'll have to get creative." The attack came at midnight. The colony's warning sirens blared as 5 sleek vessels descended from the clouds. They were similar to the black ships that had attacked the Starseeker 2 months ago, though no one on Haven knew about that incident yet. "Attention human settlement," the familiar flat voice announced. "Your colony has been chosen for combat efficiency testing. Resistance is encouraged but futile. Your defensive capabilities have been analyzed and found inadequate." Jane's voice came back calm and clear over the colony speakers. "This is Commander Wilson. We have children here. If you want to test something, test it on me. Individual combat prowess is not relevant to our analysis. Prepare for systematic engagement." The alien ships launched their first attack, a precise pattern of energy beams that should have disabled Haven's main power grid. But Jane had already ordered it shut down. Instead, the colony was running on scattered emergency generators, their power signatures masked by the agricultural dome's natural energy emissions. "Launch the drones," Jane ordered. Dozens of small agricultural drones, normally used for crop spraying, rose from the fields. They carried no weapons, but their spray tanks were filled with a mix of fertilizer and mineral supplements that created a thick, sensor-blocking haze in the air. The alien ship's targeting systems struggled to adapt to the changing visibility conditions. Their second attack wave hit mostly empty buildings. Jane had already moved most of the colonists to the underground storage facilities. "Construction teams, you're up," she called through her comm unit. The 2 construction mechs, piloted by colony engineers, began launching pieces of building materials into the air. Not as weapons, but as a screen. The aliens' sophisticated targeting systems tried to track and categorize every piece of debris, overloading their combat computers with thousands of harmless trajectories. "They're not attacking the things we throw up," Mary noted. "Their systems must be programmed to ignore non-weapon objects." Jane grinned. "Perfect. Pete, remember that trick you used to clear the fields of metal debris? The magnetic pulse. But Commander, that's not a weapon. It's just for cleaning." "Exactly. Crank it up to maximum, and target their ships when I give the word." The alien vessels maintained their perfect formation, systematically working through what seemed to be a pre-planned attack pattern. But their targets were always empty or shielded by debris and chemical fog. "Commander," one of the colonists called out, "the Western Dome's irrigation system is ready." "Good. Mary, get our patrol shuttles in the air. Random patterns, just like we practiced. Pete, start that magnetic pulse. Everyone else, brace for some crazy weather." The patrol shuttles took off, flying in seemingly chaotic patterns. At the same time, the Western Dome's irrigation system activated at full power, spraying thousands of gallons of water into the air. In the cold night air, it created instant fog, and more importantly, dozens of thermal signatures that confused the alien sensors. The magnetic pulse fired, not powerful enough to damage the alien ships, but strong enough to create static in their sensors. Combined with the water vapor, debris field, and chemical haze, it created a battlefield that defied standard combat analysis. "Their formation is breaking," Pete reported excitedly. "They can't maintain their attack pattern." The alien ships began to show signs of confusion, their perfect coordination faltering. They had been programmed to fight a conventional battle, not this chaos of farming equipment and construction materials. "Now for the fun part," Jane said. "Launch the harvesting pods." Small pods, normally used for collecting crops, shot out from hidden positions around the colony. Each one carried a small payload of metal shavings from the construction yard. As they approached the alien ships, magnetic pulses activated, turning the metal shavings into clouds of razor-sharp confetti that played havoc with the ship's sensor arrays and engine intakes. The alien vessels tried to adjust their tactics, but they couldn't compute an effective response to farming equipment being used as weapons. Their combat algorithms couldn't predict where to shoot because nothing was behaving like a weapon should. "They're pulling back," Mary announced. "Upper atmosphere. They're gone." The colony erupted in cheers, but Jane kept everyone at their posts for another 2 hours, just to be sure. When she finally called the all clear, the colonists emerged from the shelters to find their homes somewhat messy but largely intact. "I can't believe we just fought off an alien attack with farming equipment," Pete said, shaking his head in disbelief. "We didn't fight them off," Jane corrected him. "We confused them off. They had all the firepower, but they didn't know what to do when nothing made sense." In orbit above the planet, the alien observers were once again baffled by the data they had collected. The Council's research vessel had watched the entire encounter, adding it to their growing file on human combat capabilities. Their defense should have been impossible, the lead researcher reported. They used farming equipment, construction materials, and cleaning tools. None of these items register as weapons in our combat databases. Yet they successfully repelled 5 of our most advanced automated combat ships, another observer noted. The human commander turned the entire colony into a weapon, but in a way our systems couldn't recognize as a threat until it was too late. "Most fascinating is their apparent ability to coordinate chaos," the lead researcher continued. "Our scans show no evidence of advanced planning or complex command systems. The humans simply adapted. They used what they had in ways our combat computers couldn't predict." The Council's interest in humanity deepened. First, the mining ship, now this colony. Humans were displaying an unnerving ability to win battles they should lose, using methods that defied logical analysis. Back on Haven, Jane watched the colonists begin cleaning up, already turning their improvised weapons back into farming tools. She knew they'd been tested, but she didn't know why. Her gut told her this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. "Mary," she called to her second in command, "let's write up some new defense protocols. I have a feeling we're going to need them." What Jane didn't know was that her unconventional defense of Haven Colony had just become required studying material for the Council's military analysts. The humans had passed another test, proving that their unpredictability wasn't a fluke. It was their greatest strength. Tom Anderson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished welding the last piece of scrap metal to his cargo ship's hull. After 20 years of hauling goods between space stations, he never thought he'd end up defending a Council mining outpost. But here he was, turning his old ship into something that barely looked space-worthy anymore. The Council's mining station hung in space behind him, its massive ore processing facilities working at full capacity. When the Council had finally revealed themselves 3 days ago, asking for help defending this critical facility against the Void Empire, Tom had just laughed. Him, with his beat-up cargo ship, defending a station against warships. But then he remembered the stories he'd heard. The mining vessel that escaped 3 black ships, the farming colony that fought off 5 attackers. If they could do it, why couldn't he? "Your modifications are highly irregular," said Guide, the station's eye assistant. "Our simulations indicate a 98.7% probability of failure." Tom chuckled. "Good thing I never liked math much." He looked at the dozen cargo ships anchored around the station, each modified in its own strange way by their human crews. Not one of them looked the same. They were as irregular as the people who flew them. The station's alarm suddenly blared. "Multiple Void Empire vessels detected," Guide announced. "Estimated time to arrival, 10 minutes. Tom clicked on his communicator. "All ships, get to your positions. Remember, nothing fancy, nothing predictable, just like we practiced." The cargo ships fired up their engines, moving into a loose formation that looked more like a drunk dance than a military strategy. Each ship dragged behind it a makeshift net made from mining cables and scrap metal, creating a chaotic web around the station. Void Empire ships emerging from hyperspace, Guide reported. 8 warships detected. The black ships appeared, their formations perfect as always. They were sleek, deadly, and completely predictable. Tom smiled. "Begin Operation Scrapyard," he ordered. The cargo ships started their dance. They moved in patterns that made no sense, dragging their nets of debris through space. The nets shed pieces of scrap metal, creating an ever-expanding cloud of junk around the station. Their targeting systems are attempting to track all debris, Guide reported. Processing load increasing. The Void Empire ships launched their first attack, but their precise shots were thrown off by the random movements of debris. Their perfect formation started to show signs of strain as they tried to maintain position while avoiding the growing field of space junk. "Now for Phase 2, Tom called out. "Release the mining bots." Hundreds of small maintenance robots, normally used for repairing the station's outer hull, launched into space. Their simple programming had been modified. Now they tried to repair anything they came across, including the Void Empire ships. The black ship's shields easily destroyed any bots that got too close, but that was the point. Each destroyed bot added more debris to the chaos, and their shields were using energy to destroy things that weren't even weapons. "Their combat computers are showing signs of strain," Guide reported, a note of surprise in its artificial voice. "They cannot establish clear firing solutions through the debris field." Perfect. Time for the light show. The cargo ships activated their newly installed arrays of industrial flashlights, hundreds of high-powered beams normally used for illuminating asteroid mining operations. The beams bounced off countless pieces of debris, creating a disorienting strobe effect in space. The Void Empire ship's formation finally broke. Their perfect coordination relied on precise sensor data and predictable enemy movements. Instead, they faced an ever-changing maze of junk, repair bots that wouldn't stop trying to fix them, and enough flashing lights to give a computer a headache. "They're trying to regroup," Guide announced. "But their normal combat algorithms are failing to compute safe movement paths through the debris field." "Time to show them our special trick," Tom grinned. "All ships, activate your magnetic fields." Each cargo ship switched on its upgraded magnetic loading equipment, tools normally used for moving metal cargo containers. The fields weren't strong enough to affect the warships directly, but they didn't need to be. Instead, they influenced the cloud of metallic debris, making it swirl and dance in patterns that no computer could predict. The Void Empire ships found themselves trapped in a storm of magnetically charged space junk. Their shields were holding, but their sensors were overwhelmed, their targeting systems confused, and their movement patterns disrupted. "Status report," Tom called out to his fellow captains. "Holding steady. Debris field at maximum density. They haven't landed a single hit on the station." The Void Empire ships tried one last coordinated attack. Their weapons charged, trying to fire through gaps in the debris field. But the gaps weren't there by the time the shots fired. The magnetic fields had already shifted everything into new patterns. "Enemy vessels are retreating," Guide announced, its artificial voice carrying what almost sounded like awe. "The station is undamaged. Your defense was successful." Tom watched the black ships disappear into hyperspace. His ragtag fleet of cargo ships had just defeated 8 warships without firing a single shot. They had won by being unpredictable, by using simple tools in ways that confused advanced combat computers. "I still don't understand," Guide said. "None of your tactics followed any known combat protocols. Your defense should have failed." "That's exactly why it worked," Tom replied. "You can't predict what doesn't make sense." In the following hours, as the cargo ships began cleaning up the debris field, the Council's observers added another chapter to their growing study of human combat capabilities. The station's defense had proven something important. Humans didn't need advanced weapons or technology to be effective. They just needed ordinary tools and the creativity to use them in extraordinary ways. The implications are significant, one council analyst reported. The Void Empire's combat systems are based on logic, prediction, and perfect coordination. But human unpredictability makes those advantages meaningless. They won this battle using cargo ships, maintenance bots, and mining equipment. Another analyst added, most remarkable is their ability to coordinate while appearing completely uncoordinated. Each ship acted independently, creating chaos that somehow worked together as a defensive strategy. Our computers still cannot model how they achieved this. As Tom's cargo ship docked with the station for repairs, he didn't know about the Council's growing interest in humanity's potential. He was just happy they had survived, already thinking about how to improve their defenses for next time. You know, he said to Guide as he stepped off his ship, sometimes the best weapon isn't a weapon at all. Sometimes it's just a bunch of junk and the crazy idea to use it. Guide's response was unexpected. Perhaps we have been approaching combat incorrectly all this time. The most effective strategy might not be the most logical one. Tom laughed. The Council's AI was learning what humanity had known all along. Sometimes the best solution is the one that doesn't make any sense at all. Colonel Robert Hayes stood in front of the massive holographic display, watching as thousands of simulated battles played out before him. The Council's central command center was unlike anything he had ever seen, filled with technology far beyond human understanding. Yet here he was, teaching their advanced AI systems how to think less perfectly. No, he said, waving his hand through the hologram. You're still trying to be too logical. Watch this. He input a new command sequence, deliberately adding small errors and random variations. The simulation changed, showing a battle formation that looked almost sloppy. The Council's military advisors watched with a mixture of confusion and fascination. For them, warfare had always been about perfect execution, flawless coordination, and predictable patterns. Robert was teaching them something entirely different. See how the formation isn't quite perfect? He explained. That's good. The enemy's targeting computers will waste time trying to find the pattern, trying to predict where the ships should be based on standard military doctrine. But there is no pattern. One of the alien observers, a tall figure named First Analyst, stepped forward. But without perfect coordination, how can the fleet function effectively? Robert smiled. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years without perfect coordination. We learn to work together while staying unpredictable. That's what we need to teach your combat systems. The project had started 3 weeks ago, when the Council finally admitted they needed human help to fight the Void Empire. The enemy's perfect coordination and advanced combat computers had been winning battles across the galaxy, until they started encountering humans. Run the simulation again, Robert ordered. But this time, let's add some controlled chaos to the missile patterns. The holographic ships launched their weapons, but instead of the usual precise volleys, the missiles followed seemingly random trajectories. Some flew in spirals, others took unnecessarily long paths, and a few even appeared to target their own ships before suddenly changing course. This is madness, another council advisor protested. The energy expenditure is inefficient. The attack patterns make no tactical sense. Exactly, Robert grinned. That's why it works. The enemy's computers try to calculate the logical purpose behind each missile's flight path. They waste precious processing power trying to understand a pattern that doesn't exist. He had spent days explaining this concept to the Council's AI systems. The idea of intentionally adding imperfection, of programming randomness into their perfect machines, seemed to go against everything they believed in. But the results were undeniable. Show them the carrier group simulation, Robert said to his human assistant, Jim. The hologram changed, showing a fleet of council carriers. In the standard formation, they launched their fighter craft in precise, orderly waves. But in Robert's modified version, the launches looked almost chaotic, with fighters emerging in random clusters, following unpredictable paths. Your version uses 23% more fuel, First Analyst noted. The formation takes 15% longer to establish. By every tactical measure, it is inferior. Now show them what happens when they engage the enemy, Robert replied. The simulation continued. The Void Empire's ships appeared, their combat computers attempting to predict and counter the fighter movements. But the randomness of the launches, the intentional imperfection of the formations, caused their targeting systems to falter. Enemy targeting efficiency dropped to 31%, Jim reported. Their coordination algorithms are showing signs of system strain trying to compute potential patterns. Robert walked through the hologram, pointing out details. Look here and here. Their ships are actually getting in each other's way because they can't predict where our fighters will be. They're so used to fighting against perfect logic that they don't know how to handle controlled chaos. The Council observers began to understand. For centuries, they had been trying to create the perfect combat computer, one that could calculate every variable and predict every outcome. But humans were teaching them that imperfection could be a weapon in itself. We need to modify all our combat systems, Robert continued. Not to make them worse, but to make them more human. They need to learn how to be unpredictable while still working together. Over the next several hours, Robert and his team worked with the Council's engineers to modify their combat AI. They added random variables, introduced controlled errors, and taught the systems how to coordinate chaos. It's like teaching a perfectionist how to make mistakes on purpose, Jim commented as they worked. These AIs have to learn that sometimes the best move is the one that makes the least sense. The results were impressive. In simulation after simulation, the modified Council ships outperformed their original programming. The Void Empire's combat computers, designed to fight against logical opponents, couldn't adapt to enemies that intentionally introduced chaos into their tactics. But how do we know this will work in real combat? First analyst asked. Simulations are one thing, but actual battles. Before he could finish, the command center's alert system activated. A Void Empire fleet had been detected approaching a crucial Council outpost. Perfect timing, Robert said. Let's show you how this works in practice. Are any of the ships in that sector running our modified combat systems? Battle Group 7 received the update yesterday, Jim reported. They're the closest force to the outpost. Robert nodded. Order them to engage. But make sure they understand. They're not just fighting with the new programs, they're fighting with them creatively. Tell them to add their own random variations to the baseline chaos. The command center watched as Battle Group 7 engaged the Void Empire fleet. The Council ships moved in formations that seemed to make no sense, launched attacks that appeared to waste energy, and coordinated in ways that defied tactical analysis. The Void Empire ships, faced with behavior their combat computers couldn't predict, began to show signs of confusion. Their perfect formations wavered as they tried to adapt to an enemy that didn't follow any logical pattern. Enemy targeting efficiency down to 24%, Jim announced. Their ships are having to rely on basic proximity targeting because their prediction algorithms are failing. Now they're fighting like we used to, Robert said. No computers, no perfect coordination, just trying to hit what's in front of them. And guess what? Our controlled chaos is still too unpredictable for that. The battle ended in less than an hour. The Void Empire fleet retreated, having failed to land any significant hits on the Council ships. Battle Group 7 had won without losing a single vessel. Remarkable, First Analyst said. By teaching our systems to be imperfect, we have made them more perfect than ever. Robert shook his head. Not more perfect, more human. We've taught them that sometimes the best pattern is no pattern at all. As the command center celebrated the victory, Robert knew this was just the beginning. The Council had finally understood humanity's greatest military strength, their ability to coordinate chaos, to work together while remaining unpredictable, to find strength in imperfection. Start implementing the updates across the entire fleet, he ordered. And tell the programming team to get ready. We're going to teach these computers how to think outside the box they were built in. The council observers watched as Robert went back to work, still struggling to understand how teaching their perfect machines to be imperfect could make them more effective. But the evidence was undeniable. Humanity's chaos was proving to be the perfect weapon against an enemy that only understood perfection. Admiral Lisa Miller watched the largest fleet she had ever seen form up around her command ship. 5,000 council vessels, their crews a mix of aliens and humans, prepared for the final battle against the Void Empire. The enemy had gathered their remaining forces at their home system, nearly 8,000 ships strong. "All ships report ready," her executive officer reported. "The hybrid combat systems are online and functioning at optimal chaos levels." The phrase made Lisa smile. Only humans would consider chaos levels as something to be optimized. The past month had seen the Council's entire fleet retrofitted with the new combat systems, each one enhanced by human unpredictability. But Lisa had one more surprise planned, something even the Council didn't fully understand yet. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. When the communication line activated, she took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Miller. Today we face the largest Void Empire fleet ever assembled. They think they know what we're capable of. They think they can calculate every move we'll make. They're wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Each battle group has received sealed orders. They contain random variables, unexpected tactical changes, and intentionally imperfect formations. No two groups have the same orders. No one, not even me, knows exactly what everyone else will do. That's our strength." The Council's military advisors had protested this plan. How could a fleet function if its own commander didn't know what each ship would do? But Lisa understood something they didn't. True unpredictability had to start at the top. The Void Empire based their entire military on perfect coordination and flawless prediction, she continued. "So we'll give them something they can't coordinate against, something they can't predict. We'll give them controlled chaos on a scale they've never seen. Good luck, everyone." Miller out. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, emerging at the edge of the Void Empire's home system. The enemy fleet waited in their perfect formation, their black ships arranging themselves in geometric patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so deadly. "They're scanning us," the sensor officer reported. "Their combat computers are trying to analyze our formation." Lisa smiled. "Let's give them something to think about. All ships, execute your random start variables." The Council fleet suddenly shifted. Each battle group began moving in different patterns, some aggressive, some defensive, some apparently nonsensical. Ships that should have been in the front moved to the back. Support vessels took positions normally reserved for battleships. Nothing made tactical sense, and that was exactly the point. "Enemy fleet is responding," Tactical reported. "Their formation is shifting to compensate." No, wait, they're having trouble deciding how to respond. The Void Empire ships hesitated, their perfect coordination wavering as their combat computers tried to calculate the logical reason behind the Council fleet's movements. But there was no logic to calculate, no pattern to predict. "Launch fighters," Lisa ordered. "Tell them to use the chaos protocols we developed." Thousands of fighter craft poured from the carrier ships, but they didn't launch in organized waves. Instead, they seemed to burst out randomly, like a swarm of angry insects. Some flew in spirals, others in zigzags, and some appeared to be completely lost, until they suddenly weren't. The Void Empire's first volley of fire missed almost entirely. Their targeting computers, designed to predict where ships should be based on logical combat doctrine, couldn't handle targets that deliberately defied logic. "Begin the main attack," Lisa commanded. "All ships, activate your sealed orders. Let's show them what controlled chaos really means." What followed was unlike any space battle in history. Each Council battle group executed different tactics, all of them unexpected. Some ships fired their weapons in seemingly random directions, only for their shots to be redirected by the gravity wells of other ships, moving in precisely timed, but apparently chaotic patterns. Fighter squadrons appeared to flee in terror, only to lead enemy ships into crossfires they couldn't predict. Support ships used their repair beams as weapons, their healing energy overloading enemy shields because the Void Empire's computers never considered the possibility of being attacked by something designed to fix things. Enemy fleet showing signs of systematic failure, Tactical reported excitedly. Their combat coordination is breaking down. They can't maintain their formation when every threat behaves differently. The Void Empire ships began to break apart into smaller groups, their perfect coordination shattered by the sheer unpredictability of the attack. Each time their combat computers established a pattern in one part of the battle, the Council ships would change tactics, introducing new forms of chaos. Look at their flagship, Lisa's executive officer pointed out. Their formation is trying to adapt, but each adaptation fails because they can't predict what we'll do next. Lisa watched as the massive enemy fleet, which had terrorized the galaxy with its perfect coordination and unstoppable combat algorithms, began to come apart. Ships collided with each other as they tried to evade attacks from directions their computers said were tactically impossible. Entire battle groups found themselves caught in crossfires because they followed logical escape routes that the Council ships had deliberately left open. "Send in the final wave," Lisa ordered. "Let's show them the true power of human unpredictability." The reserve force of Council ships emerged from hyperspace, but instead of joining the battle directly, they began manipulating the space around it. Using modified gravity generators, they created a constantly shifting battlefield where the normal rules of space combat no longer applied. The Void Empire's remaining ships found themselves in a battle zone where up and down changed randomly, where straight lines became curves, and where their perfect formations were torn apart by gravitational forces that didn't follow any logical pattern. "Enemy fleet is retreating," Tactical announced. "Their combat computers are completely overwhelmed. They can't establish any effective combat solutions." Lisa watched as the once mighty Void Empire fleet fled in disorder. Their perfect coordination had been their greatest strength, but humans had turned it into their greatest weakness. By introducing controlled chaos into every aspect of the battle, they had rendered the enemy's advanced combat systems worse than useless. Hours later, as the Council fleet regrouped and began repairs, Lisa received a message from the Council's high command. The Void Empire had surrendered, their leadership finally understanding that they couldn't win a war against an enemy that used chaos itself as a weapon. "The Council wishes to express its gratitude," First Analyst said in the message. "You have shown us that perfection isn't always the answer. Sometimes, the most effective weapon is the ability to be unpredictable." Lisa smiled as she looked out at the fleet. Humans hadn't won this war with superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won it by teaching the most advanced civilization in the galaxy that sometimes the best strategy is to throw away the strategy book entirely. "Send a message to all ships," she ordered. "Tell them that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our weapons. It was our ability to work together while remaining unpredictable, to coordinate chaos itself. Today, we didn't just win a battle. We proved that being perfectly logical isn't always the logical choice." As the fleet began its journey home, Lisa knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had changed the way war was fought, not by making it more advanced, but by teaching everyone the value of imperfection. They had become the ultimate weapon not through strength or technology, but through their unique ability to make chaos work in their favor.